Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Hi. Yeah. Can you
Awesome.
guys hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay, awesome. Yay. I love it when technology works.
Fingers crossed.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh, I
can't
better
jinx
knock on
it.
some wood.
Yeah,
Gosh, I just jinked it. Oh my gosh.
there we go. Taken care of.
Okay. Yay. Okay. Let's see. Did we?
Could you get the other presenter reconnect? There we go. Now you're all
Okay, there.
live.
Oh, okay.
Yay.
Hi.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Josh.
I just had to refresh.
Oh, okay.
Everybody was frozen.
Oh, no.
No problem. Um, so I think everyone can hear us, hopefully. Um, but we will kick this off in just a minute. Um, we just had our opening remarks with Faisal and Cindy and Christy and myself. So I think just giving everyone a minute to roll in here, and then Sarah and Kiki will let you introduce yourselves. For everyone who's joining in, my name's Gina. I am one of your directors for PR and media. And this is being a female artist in a male dominated field. So we have to, I know it's what a topic to start off the
Mhm.
day. I love it though. I love it. I mean, you might as well. Might as well.
Mhm.
Um, so thank you everyone for joining us and for supporting KawaiiKon this weekend, our very first virtual convention. So just a couple of ground rules because this is not a light topic. Um, so a few things about what this is not. This is not the end all, speak all of gender studies. Like this is just a place where we get to share our experiences, our stories, and create a safe space for you to do the same. And then hopefully we can find some things in common, some ways to support each other and grow together. And this is by no means male bashing or any gender bashing or any other kind of anything like that. Just in general, KawaiiKon does not tolerate hate speech or bullying, so please keep that in mind. Um, Yay! Hi, Grace. I see your comments. So thank you, thank you again for joining us today. So yeah, um, let's watch the comments. I know that we do have our other directors helping us, keeping an eye on that. Um, if you are deemed to be what is the word? Inappropriate, you may or may not get a warning. You might just get booted, so just keep that in mind. Okay. Who's ready?
I'm ready.
Born
Okay.
So
ready.
ready. Chat about this stuff
Born
all the time.
ready.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to try and not take over the conversation like I just did. Um, I'm going to try and keep it rolling for you guys. So I will keep my eye on the comments. I'll pull up some of the questions that were already submitted. But let's start with the two of you introducing yourselves. Sarah, did you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, well, I'm Sarah Mills. I'm a freelance artist and I moonlight as a digital marketer. I have worked freelance my whole life. I do conventions. I work on small teams. I work as just an individual contracting for someone else. I don't really have experience in-house, but I have been working as a freelancer for I started doing conventions and selling my artwork in 2010, 2011. So it's been a minute. But yeah, that's me. I just wrapped up work on Dog's Bond game, which we are going to have. I think Alex said we were going to do a demo of after, like, in a while. I don't know. Check the Discord. It'll be there.
Yes. Yes, that is the other thing I forgot to mention at the very beginning. Both of our ladies here on our panel are from Dogs Bond, a new board game. And if anyone wants to stick around for a demo right after this panel, we will be having that as well. Kiki?
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Kiera. I go by Kiki, though. If anyone calls me Kiera, I'm probably in trouble. Um, I'm a graphic designer by trade, self-taught illustrator based in North Carolina. I've been working in the design industry for around 4 years now. I'm typically in-house, so pretty opposite of Sarah. Dog Spawn was actually the first like legit paid freelance thing I did. Um, and yeah, that's about
I
it.
kind of
Like Sarah said, we
dragged
just.
her into it. Sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I think that's going to happen a lot because there's kind of a delay. So everybody just keep in mind that could happen. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. So thank you so much for lending us with your experiences and your expertise. So let's start with a question that I received actually from a few different people. So I think it's been on a lot of, yes, we're going to start with a question. So it's a two-parter. So let's start with how can males help support other female artists, or we can even keep it more general than that, females in the workplace if you do work in a male-dominated field or industry. What are some ways that you feel like other male coworkers could help?
Key, do you want to go first, or shall I? I don't want to speak over you.
You can go first.
Okay, cool. So I think like just in general, based on my experience, I don't really want to be treated differently. I just want to be acknowledged and listened to. There is this incredible phenomenon that happens if you're a woman and hanging out in a group of men and one of the men is being a little bit sexist, where like there's a reason the term dog whistle exists. It literally is, if a dude is saying something sexist, other men can't hear it. They just unless it is just like extremely blatant, they just can't pick up on it at all. Which is fine, you know. Like I feel like if you're a woman, or I mean, any minority really, we can't talk about discrimination without, you know, we can't just talk about sexism. But after a lifetime of picking up on little things, you start to develop kind of a sixth sense for it. And so, you know, being an adult, having a lot of experience in, you know, dealing with this kind of thing, I can pretty much tell right away if somebody's rubbing me wrong, that it's like, it's maybe a little bit of misogyny in there. And more than anything, if I say that, I just want someone to kind of take me at my word and take me at face value. Like, okay, if they're making you uncomfortable, or maybe I need to watch out for that, or just even if you're a dude, I'm not expecting you to be completely trained in that or to be able to pick up on dog whistles. But maybe if it seems like I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable, then maybe try and pay attention to that. Like, just remember that sexism kind of always happens all the time everywhere. And following your female coworker's lead in how do I deal with it? Should I say something? Should I intervene? You know, like I said, don't treat me any differently, but do pay attention to other men or other people that you might feel are being discriminatory. Yeah, that's me.
Definitely. It's also the intent behind it, right? And not just the connotation of it. Or that the intent is what leads into that connotation of the terms that are being used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's another thing. Like, if you are, that's something else that men can do. You know, working with women and trying to be more sensitive is like, don't be afraid to enter a conversation where you're going to be uncomfortable and you're probably going to be in the wrong, or may have stepped on someone's toes or done something, you know, unintentional. Like, doing or saying something sexist doesn't mean that you are just like a wholly evil person. You know, if I point out that someone has said something sexist, it doesn't mean that like we are enemies now, or I hate you, or, you know, it's the end of the world. Like, everybody makes mistakes. It's fine. And if something happens where, for example, a male coworker or a male team member has said something kind of sexist or that I'm hurt by, and I bring that up with them, and they're like totally chill, it's not a big deal, then the magical thing happens of next time they say something that makes me a little bit uncomfortable, I give them the benefit of the doubt because I know that it is not a calculated move where they're trying to make me uncomfortable. It's just a genuine mistake that they've made and they're willing to kind of take ownership of and then move forward and be better. Because you don't expect anybody to be perfect. Like everybody's going to make mistakes. But just like, like I said earlier, just believe me about it. Take what I'm saying kind of at face value and then be cool if you do happen to mess up and move forward. And then I'm going to be cool back. Like, it's just like that faith begets faith in one another.
Yeah. Just be respectful. Hearing other people out, it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
Okay. Kiki, did you want to share on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I think my answer would be largely the same. I feel like prefacing all of that with like, I just want to be treated as an equal, like pretty much covers it. But I noticed that like to Sarah's point, it's not always just something that somebody's saying. Like a lot of the times, an environment that's created of where you just assume that nobody's going to take you seriously, or you assume that like the voices of your male coworkers are going to dominate yours. And I feel like a lot of the time in one of the workplaces I was in, I felt like I had to fight to keep up, quote unquote, with my male coworkers because my work was constantly being compared to theirs. Or like if I brought up something that I was upset about to my boss, for instance, that it was usually addressed when they said something. But if if I said something, sometimes it was dismissed as being too emotional, or you're taking it too seriously, or nothing was done about it, or it just went nowhere. And I feel like that kind of stuff is like, it makes it really hard to speak up for yourself, because you're automatically in the mindset of, well, you've shown me that you're not taking this seriously, and it makes me not want to talk about it anymore, And I think that if we can get men to, like Sarah said at the baseline, like take all of this stuff seriously and actually like care about women in the workplace as equals, then I think a lot of this would start resolving itself.
Yeah, it's just I feel like I know we talked a little bit about it, but my background is completely different. I started in pharmacy, right? So it's a medical field, where the day-to-day face that you see, especially with my classmates that I went through pharmacy school with, is Asian female. And generally, like that was the majority that I went to school with. When I came back home to Hawaii, that was the majority that I worked with. And yet, as you go higher up to the managers, to the regional directors, to the vice presidents, right? It becomes more and more male. And I think part of it, just in general, from the workspaces to promotions to moving to different fields, it's just being heard. And I think having that sensitivity of knowing when someone's uncomfortable or that someone else might be trying to make the situation uncomfortable, that just comes with experience and being attuned to other people. And I think for women, especially if you are, in a STEM field or in arts as well, if you grow up around that, being very well aware that you are in a minority, whether it's a gender or an ethnic minority, you're already sensitive to that. So I think having coworkers who are willing to hear you out and be supportive is huge, and that's definitely a very good first step. So the other part to this question was, what can females do to help support other females in, other female artists or in your field? So it kind of becomes interesting, right? Because not everyone shares that same view of, a field being one gender or another, really. So
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting because not everyone shares that same level of sensitivity, right? That
Mm-hmm.
how you view the workplace is not necessarily how others view the workplace, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
yeah, Kiki, I don't know if you want to start with this one or you want to punt it over to Sarah?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I think my main issue that I ran into with this, with my other female coworkers, was the hostility of the environment can bleed over into how we treat each other. So, like, even if, for instance, one of my female coworkers was getting a lot of trash from like a higher up, um, her empathy towards me was reduced because of what she was going through. And so, I guess my advice to other females in the workspace would be to not let that kind of pressure dissolve your empathy for your other female coworkers, because they're probably going through the same thing that you are, and it would help more to have like a confidant or somebody who understands what you're going through, um, on your side, instead of turning them against each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Definitely.
I think solidarity just with everyone is a much more productive way to move forward, even with your male coworkers. I know this question is about what other women can do, but like if you just like, men being ready and willing to enter into conversations that are probably going to make them uncomfortable. It is not a I'm calling you out for being sexist and I have beef with the male coworkers. It's like I want us all to work together towards a solution where everyone is more uncomfortable. And so approaching the other women with stuff like that is ideal, where like I don't there's this feeling I think that some women can have where like it is easier to dodge some of the sexism or to come to terms with the fact that people aren't going to take you as seriously by trying
Mm-hmm.
to by really leaning into trying to make other men happy, by like
Mm-hmm.
yes anding all of their ideas and never speaking up for yourself and never making yourself a problem. And so if that's how they've gotten through in the team, and then you as a new team member come in being the woman who's prepared to be a problem when they're not taken seriously, it's really rocking the boat for how they have made their own environment a lot more comfortable for them. Which like I mean, it's a coping mechanism that works for a lot of people a lot of the time, so I can definitely understand friction there. But again, like if everyone's willing to kind of like let the ego go and let the self-importance go and just like be willing to enter in a conversation where everyone is humble and ready to come to a solution for any level of toxicity, which again is if only it were that easy. But that's for me anyway, with the other women, I tend to approach it in sort of a like, I'm definitely not here to shade you or to critique the way that you're interacting with other people, or it's you just have to make sure that everyone understands that like it's not about conflict, it is about removing conflict, resolving it completely. Sometimes you have to face it to do that, but the ultimate goal is to get it to go away. Yeah.
And ideally, right, in a perfect world, um, our gender, our skin color, our orientation would play no part in whatever job we wanted, whatever career we wanted, right? In a perfect
Mhm.
world. But till we get there, solidarity.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, like,
So this kind
feminism
of,
really, sorry.
oh, no, no, no. Please
It's
complete
gonna
that thought.
happen.
um, yeah. I mean, feminism really is not it's not us versus them. It is everybody needs to be treated equally. That means men too, cis men, trans women, everybody, and so for men, it is not, as long as you communicate that it's like I'm not trying to take anything from you, I'm trying to make sure that everyone here feels comfortable to be themselves, and that includes you. So if there's anything that you feel uncomfortable with when maybe interacting with women, or maybe you feel like you assume that you have to have a leadership role because you're a man, or assume that you have to become the manager or team leader, like there's toxicity in like in sexism that is also aimed towards men. And so like it's again tough to be the one that's rocking the boat, but ultimately you're just trying to smooth things over for everybody.
Definitely. So I just want to point out a couple of comments and questions coming through the Twitch chat. Again, words are hard.
Yeah.
So I did see a question from Art Till Dawn. So I am going to table that one for a little bit later in the conversation, but I want to acknowledge that I did see it. And I do see one of our commenters here is sharing her story, which I love. She's a math teacher and has had some experience with male counterparts. I think trying to diminish her, yeah, it's not a
Yeah,
happy
sorry, I just
story.
read that.
So,
Told by a male coworker
but
that I couldn't do a certain math problem. Oh boy.
yeah,
Yeah,
let me
that's,
tell
I
you
mean,
how you cannot do your job.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, but I mean, I love that. So guys, keep sharing your questions, keep sharing your stories. We do, like we said at the beginning, we want this to be a safe space where people can find more what we have in common and how we can support each other rather than be divided. So keep on keeping on. Um,
And I think
okay.
the more that we normalize like people sharing these kinds of stories, and like we normalize the reaction of like that's not okay that that happened to you, like it's not something that you deserve, it's not sensible, it doesn't make any sense, you know, like I think
Mhm.
the less people will feel the need to make people feel like that, and it won't become acceptable, you know. I think that's our goal here.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very good point. So kind of playing into something that both of you mentioned earlier. Um, oh, I lost it. Where did it go? Um, what what kept you going when you felt that you were in a job or a position where you felt unheard?
Hmm.
So kind of playing into something that you guys both had mentioned before about what coworkers can help with in the workplace as far as just listening and being sensitive to the situations that you're in. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know who feels comfortable tackling that one first.
Well, mine's probably going to be shorter than yours, Kiki, which is to say that, like, working freelance, I have had some contracts that lasted, several years or multiple years, but it's usually they're not. I haven't found a contract that I know is going to last forever. So for me, it's just if there isn't another woman on the team that I can kind of like try and solve this problem with or commiserate with, then for better or worse, clients come and go. Um, so I have been in positions where it's kind of just grin and bear it, try and as much as I can push back on it without endangering my own position. But then also like making sure that like I'm very product focused. I like take a lot of pride in my work and I really want the thing that we're making to be the best that it can be. So the biggest like thing that I care about is if like I have a good idea and you're not listening to me, it is not going to compromise the product that we're making. If I want to put my name on this thing, it's going to be the best that I can make it in, whatever I have control over. Um, so, for me anyway, getting through involves like just remembering that projects come and go. The contract is going to be over at some point. Um, Trying to find solidarity with other women if that applies, and also just focusing on like if they're going to diminish me, if they're not going to take me seriously, that's going to happen to some degree. But this thing that we're making, the work that I am doing, is going to be the best that I can possibly make it. And they can't take that from me. Kiki.
Oh, are we just gonna let's
I
okay.
mean, if you have anything to add, or any of your own experiences that you want to share, just how to get through being unheard or even unseen, maybe in the workplace.
Yeah, I think Sarah's point is pretty much what I would say. Although I did have a lot of other like female coworkers that I could confide in, and I think just like being able to talk about the experiences that you're having and being able to like check it against somebody, like everyone's telling me, or like the person that offended me is telling me that I'm overreacting. Um, and then telling other people about that and saying, am I overreacting? Like specifically women, and they're like, you're absolutely not overreacting. Like that's a problem, and you should talk to somebody about it. You know what I mean? It just kind of helps. But if you
Yeah,
don't
you
have
specifically have
that,
also been sorry.
oh, that's okay. Go on. I was pretty much done.
Well, you specifically have been something that helps me get through toxic work environments.
Oh,
Just
I can
having
help.
somebody to like, can you believe what he said?
Yeah.
No, exactly. Having a sounding board is important, you know, whether male, female, just having that, yeah, someone else to be like, okay, you're outside of the situation. Let me tell you what happened and give me your take on it. You know, it's
Hmm.
always helpful to have that that gauge, that external gauge.
Hmm. Yeah, just remember that you're
I've
not alone and you're
also
not going crazy.
Yes. It also helps even to talk to some of your other like male coworkers about it. Like, I'll give an example, I suppose, keeping it extremely general. But one time I was getting like a one-on-one reprimand from one of my superiors, and I started getting really upset because the things that he was saying just weren't very in line. So obviously I can't really control like getting super upset about that. And he was like, "You seem really upset. I feel like you're way too emotional. Have you considered getting therapy?" And I'm like, all right, no. And he's like, "I think you should get therapy. You probably need it." And I'm like, okay. And I just remember leaving that room unable to give him an answer because I was just so like caught off guard by that. And I remember asking one of my male coworkers, like, "Hey, is that a thing? Like, is that a thing that he should have said to me?" And he was like, "No, absolutely not. That's crazy." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Just checking."
Hmm.
That's just rude.
Ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to that point, like about talking to your male coworkers about your experiences, like you don't have to. I mean, when you're speaking with somebody who maybe is not a man who is not a feminist, somebody who's maybe not gonna agree with you that someone is doing something sexist specifically, just without starting the conversation like, "Hey, can you believe the sexist thing that he said to me?" You can just be like,
Mm-hmm.
did you hear what he just said to me? Or did you see how that conversation went down where I pitched my totally valid idea and he shot it down for no reason and then accepted the same or similar idea from a male coworker? Like just not even like pointing out the sexism. If you're going to have a long relationship with this, male coworker or friend, or maybe you want them to be a little bit more in tune to that, just like I was saying at the beginning, like want them to pick up on the dog whistles a little bit. Just establishing, instead of trying to keep it in, just establishing like, hey, that supervisor was like a huge wad to me again for like the fourth time this week. He was belittling or he said something completely out of line, and just like not trying to keep all of that stuff inside.
And I think
So
that that.
I'm.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, no, go for it, go.
I think to your point, it is super important to bring that kind of stuff to like male coworkers that you're cool with, and getting them used to like noticing that kind of stuff, like you were saying, Sarah, because I think that in the end, that's very valuable for both of you. It's valuable for you because then you have yet another person that you can confide in, and it's valuable for them because then they can do something about it, instead of just like watching it happen. And then they can work on
Mhm.
developing like that kind of solidarity and that empathy, and that's good for them too. So
Exactly. Sorry, so there was actually another question um, that kind of dovetails off of what Sarah was saying, where you pitched a project idea that was totally legit, but was turned down, but another project from a male coworker was accepted. So are there any other things that you've faced in your workplace, or maybe any other situation, where you feel like you would not have faced if it was not for your gender? So basically, if you were a guy, you would probably
Mhm.
not have had to deal with that sort of thing. So, does anything come to mind? Like, the question is based around work, but I'm sure this has happened in other
Mhm.
situations.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, mine's probably going to be shorter, Kiki. I know that working in-house in places is probably a lot worse. But so being freelance, I work on really small teams a lot of the time. So I'm not often like offering competing ideas with other men. Um, but lots of times it's just you notice differences in how people speak to you. This happens more often when I'm like I said at the top. I will what's the word moonlight as a digital marketer. I have marketing clients as well, and so there is just that's one of the few instances where I am in a room with people who are we're all having a conversation about how to pick up new clients or how to increase return on investment on such and such thing. And it's so subtle, but I have to do a lot more selling of my ideas than the men in the room
Mm,
do. I have to be like very precise in my language. I have to plan for every contingency for every idea that I'm pitching. And there's a lot less willing to like just go with me on this or yes or maybe let's turn this into spitballing and come up with new ideas. It's a lot less constructive. It's more of like they're ready to critique anything that I say. And that's it is less tangible. This is one of those things that like I don't necessarily blame other men for not noticing because it is really hard to pick up on, but like you can tell just how the flow of conversation tends to stop and be a lot more critical when a girl is speaking. And of course, being a nerd and a gamer and playing like the video game that I play most often is PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and there's not a lot of girls that play that, unfortunately. And so, just like I can't just you just can't turn voice chat on when you're playing that game because if they hear a
mm,
woman's voice in it, it's a whole thing. Um, Same thing, and this is on like since I was a kid, playing like World of Warcraft and other stuff. Like it's just you everything alters your behavior and your speech patterns to try and avoid that kind of thing. Um, anyway, back to professional examples. Kiki, I'm sure you have 100,000 locked and loaded.
I do. I do unfortunately have 100,000. Um, like even just like you reading the question, like 5 or 6 instances flash through my brain. Um, so I'm trying to think of which one I should start with. Okay, let's. I'll go with 2. I think on top of like my superior telling me that I needed therapy, which I'm pretty sure he would have never said that to a man. Um, but so I mentioned that I went by Kiki, right? Um, and my name is Kiara, but even going into a job, like they ask you on a form, what is your preferred name? And I told them Kiki. And as I introduced myself to everyone in that room, when I was first starting, I said that my name is Kiki, because that's what I'm called. um, and every male in that room refused tooth and nail to call me what I asked to be called. Um, and eventually it got to the point where a superior of mine pulled me into a room and said, "Hey, I don't think that you should be called Kiki." And I'm like, "Okay, that's my name." And he's like, "Yeah, but it's just like, it's really silly and unprofessional and it sounds childish." And I'm like, "Okay, um, that's cool." And he's like, furthermore, like nobody else in our room goes by nicknames. Like I just feel like it's really unprofessional of you to go by a nickname. And I'm like, literally, as he's saying this to me, I'm like, what's your whole name? He goes by half of his name. Like, nobody calls him his full name. And I'm like,
Do you want a
what's up with that?
non-specific name example?
Yes, go for it.
Someone named Matthew going by Matt.
Exactly. That was
So there
exactly
were
what it was. And
at least 2 people. That's not like real names redacted, but like there were at least 2 people in that room that did that, right?
4.
That had like
I literally
4 people.
As the conversation was progressing, I was like, this person goes by this person goes by this person goes by their middle name, and this person goes by this. Like, and he had no answer for me, and he's like, yeah, but I think like Kiki is just like super childish. And I'm like, there are so many Black women named Kiki, so come back to me when you have a real reason. And that's not, I wish that was the end of the story, but he then, instead of taking it and respecting it, he gathered up all of my coworkers and sat them down in a room and said, you are not allowed to call her Kiki.
Wow.
Yeah. And by this point, like, I was friends with everybody in that room, and they told me, like, hey, he took us in a room and said that we can't call you this, but that's bogus, so we're not going to do it. And I'm like, okay. Like,
there's some solidarity.
Yeah, it was just like insane. I still can't believe that that was like a thing. And it's not even like I could talk to HR about it because they didn't care. So, yeah. They already hated me because another thing that I had all the time there, I got called into HR constantly because people were reporting me for wearing a dress. And I'm like, okay. They gave me the guidelines. They were like fingertip length for the dress, right? Here, let me stand up for this one. Because, I'm kind of tall. I don't know if you can tell, but fingertip
Wait, you need
length
to
is
move over
here
and
on
frame
me.
a little bit. There you go.
Ta-da!
I'm kind of tall, so they're like fingertip length, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was very careful about adhering to that rule because I was like, okay, that's a rule. And I still got called all the time. And I told them, I was like, this was the rule. And they're like, not for you because you're too tall. And I'm like, okay. But I just think it's like a silly thing that women have to worry about that. Because like my male coworkers would get called into HR over like they were wearing a t-shirt instead of a collared shirt. But the distinct difference was whenever a woman got called into HR over something they were wearing, it was always implied like, oh, it's because you're being too risque, or it's like some attack on their morality or them as a person. But for the men, it's always like, oh, well, you're just not following the rules. And they're not like shamed for that. They're not made to feel gross for that. It's just like, oh, it's cool or whatever, just put on a different shirt. That's all.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure that is just the tip of the iceberg. Oh, no.
It is, yeah.
And I feel like, you know, it is always, especially in a situation like that, like you are opening that relationship in a new job with being, I don't know, standing up for yourself, or in their eyes, rocking the boat, or not just falling in line. And so from then on, it's like if they're looking for reasons to, I don't know, get at you or find something wrong with your work so that they can excuse the way that they've been treating you, which is like by default, you're not allowed to use the name that you've gone by your whole life. Which is truly bananas. Like, that story. It's one of those that's like you 100% you know that it has happened, but like it's hard to believe that that's where we're at in the year of our Lord 2017, 18, whenever this was.
It was a while ago.
Oh my goodness. There's a story in the Twitch chat about Yoda forgetting to put his pants on, and that's why he was called to HR.
That's
I
okay. Yeah, I could understand that. I feel like if I forgot to
Like
put pants
I
on, someone, yeah, that I
yeah,
could
I get
understand.
that. How? Okay, I want to
I
know like how do you forget? How do you forget to put your pants on?
Well,
I need
or
answers.
how
maybe
you
I don't
forget, I
know.
understand, but like how you make it like out in the world. Like, did you have to sit in a car or commute? And was it weird to feel like the car seat on your bare legs?
And then, furthermore, like
Um,
getting out of the car and walking to the building, like you don't think there's too much air going on. Like, I don't
or
understand.
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
um,
that's an amazing,
just a
amazing life
little.
that you've lived.
What? I'm
So not quite the
confused.
same. Uh, yeah, I'm thinking the same thing that it might be a Zoom call scenario, where maybe you forgot and stood up. But anyway, we digress. Um, so I know that you guys have mentioned before, gaming. And I think one of our initial calls, you mentioned even D&D. You guys have a campaign or something going on,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? Okay,
Yeah,
awesome, awesome. My girlfriends and I too. We just started our own campaign.
that's exciting.
But it's fun. It's a lot of fun. But I like how Sarah had mentioned that, you never went on voice because as soon as the other players hear a female voice, things change. Like the whole interaction changes. Um, and you're not the first person to say that. I've had a few friends playing WoW and playing League, whatever. They refuse to use voice. They will not go on voice. They will use a male sounding username, even creating male characters, just so that they don't get harassed, and this is going to attach to Art Till Dawn's earlier question about female artists having to deal with a toxicity on social media for being female and an artist. And that I'm sure has become bigger and more prominent, or at least more talked about now, um, because social media has been growing so much. There's live streams of artists doing their thing, of like creating a piece of work live online, right? And doing that, you could do it without sound, but I'm sure people can extrapolate your gender from even just like watching you do your work, or even from your hands, or I don't even know, like something in the background. Even if you are not female, if you have feminine things around, people are going to assume, and then that could then change their interaction with you. So have either of you experienced that toxicity online on social media, specifically dealing with your artwork, with your work, but also in the realm of gaming? Because hey, it's gonna bleed over into that too.
Yeah, I so uh, it is rare that anyone comes after me just for being a woman in like generalized social media. But whenever you speak up about gender issues, there's always somebody who's going to find it and come in the comments and tell you that you're wrong. And they may not be that direct or polite about it. And they may not be that mercifully brief to just say you're wrong. It could just be on and on. Um, you know, so many like debates that get sparked over things that really shouldn't be debates about whether or not you're allowed to, or whether your interpretation of something as sexist is valid. Um, and it gets really exhausting to have to like sometimes all you're doing is speaking to lived experience about my lifetime of being a woman, being professional, just being out in the world has taught me that if somebody says this kind of borderline thing, it's probably gonna, bleed into something sexist, or just saying, I am uncomfortable with this because I suspect it's sexism, which is something that, like, you can't tell me how I feel about it. If all I say is I'm uncomfortable, like, that's objectively true. I'm the only one that, and yet it's always it feels like people feel like they are allowed to comment on your experience, your thoughts, your appearance, your opinion. It's just like, and to a certain degree, that's kind of the internet, but like it becomes a lot more heated, I think, when men feel like they can just say, no, actually, I know better than you about everything. Yourself, your own feelings, this video game and how you approach playing it. A friend of mine, a mutual friend of ours, named Ginny, is a professional cosplayer, and she is very much currently into tabletop gaming. And oh boy, anytime she says anything about, yeah, it's bananas. Anytime she says anything about her character or the builds, her tweets, her replies are just so full of like, here's how you should do this better, here's what you did wrong, here's what like I should have done or I would have done if I were you. She has even, oh, I'm sorry, I bet that was really loud. She has even like some of her more complicated cosplay builds. My favorite as in I hate it, is one time a dude drew an iPhone app diagram of how she got the costume to ambulate mechanically. She built it. She made it was a centaur costume with where the legs moved. She built the thing herself.
Oh.
And this guy took his iPhone and drew her a little diagram about how the thing that she made worked. Like this thing just, I mean, it is incredible to me how everything about you is open to commentary. And of course that happens in video games as well. Like, whenever like World of Warcraft was kind of the most toxic, what's the word? Like gaming community that I have been a part of, where I would play a female character. I would never get on voice and I would never actually own up to being a girl. But just because my character was female, I got a non-zero amount of sexual harassment just based on the assumption that there might be a woman on the other side of the screen. Yeah, it's just like, and this is something that, like, if you're a woman, this is not news to you. If you're a woman who's been on the internet and has played video games, or even just in general had an opinion about, anything, this isn't news. But I am consistently shocked about how men kind of they're just not tuned into it, and they just don't notice it. There's plenty of times where, like, when it was a few years ago, I went into a Discord server for folks interested in game development, and I made some comment about it. We were actually talking about World of Warcraft and how I never used voice, and they were like, well, it's always easier to do voice, to coordinate with your team and do raids and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but I can't, you know why. And they genuinely were like, why? Like, why would you be afraid to be on voice? And I'm like, boys, I have some bad news for you about the internet's opinion about women.
Sorry to bust your bubble, but
yeah, I really want to live in the world that you live in, where there would be no reason for me not to use voice, but unfortunately I don't.
Yeah.
Anyway. Sorry, I've been talking a lot.
Oh no.
I actually was reminded of. Oh, sorry.
Oh no. Go.
I was reminded of the time that me and you, Sarah, were on a live stream on Twitch. Like, I was streaming art, and like, some dude came into the Twitch chat and was like, "Oh, you're an artist, are you?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, name some famous artists." And I'm like, literally, okay. Like, and I am so, like, dense about this kind of stuff. Like, I don't pick up on it because I want to believe, like Sarah said, that people aren't being sexist jerks. And so I was like, oh man, okay, let me think of some. I can't think of any off the top of my head. And then I started listing off famous artists. And then he was like, oh, well, let me help you out. And just did like a whole list of artists, like, I guess trying to put me in my place. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm the one here drawing. And then he went on to be like, oh, your friend Sarah sounds sexy. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, can I just be on Twitch and draw and exist? Like,
Yeah,
what's happening?
be out here without this. Like,
Yeah. And honestly, like, it made me kind of afraid to keep streaming. And I definitely stopped streaming art, which I want to fix. But even playing video games, I played a couple of retro games on Twitch for a while, but then I started playing Dark Souls. And let me tell you something about Dark Souls is if there's a gatekeeper out there, they'll do it. So I had a couple of people come in there and explain to me everything I was doing wrong and how I need to play the game, and made me want to stop playing it. So, but I think how I overcome that is I just told myself, like, if I'm having fun playing this, I can't let some rando decide that I'm not allowed to play it because I'm a girl. Like, that sucks. So I'm just going to do what I want. And if people have a problem with me being a woman and drawing, or me being a woman and gaming, like playing your precious Dark Souls that only boys can play, like, get over yourself. Like, then that just makes me want to do it even more.
Yeah. So, Torin Tech Corner in the Twitch chat, I noticed, Kiki, about you talking about, like, him saying name some famous artists, that the only proper answer is myself. Which is like, yeah. It's me.
The only one that
I'm
matters.
the artist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. It's, bless you, Kiki. You're so willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. I would have been like, get out of here. Just get out.
Yeah.
But I do hope that you start streaming art again, because I love watching it. Like, when artist friends post it on Facebook, I try to tune in as much as I can, because seeing other people's creative process, it encourages you to be creative as well, right? So for you, just wanting to put that artistic